just shoot the little breeze a little bit at first and just kind of.
So where do you work? You said you just got off work.
Yeah, I work at Arc of the Ozarks.
Oh, that's right. I read that somewhere.
Yeah, I work with individuals with disabilities, so I have a home that I work with 2 guys and just kind of help them, live their lives
Right.
to the best that they can. They have clients of all different abilities and disabilities.
Right. Are you the guy that took Jackie's ring up to her?
I got it from the guy here, and then I gave it to someone else that brought it up.
Oh, okay. Boy, it went around more than I thought.
I think was how it went. Yeah, because I got it from somebody who got it from whoever resized it, and then.
Oh, that was. I think I took it by your house or something.
Oh yeah, okay. I got it from you.
Yeah.
And then I did whatever I had to do to get it to her. I forget. I think I gave it to Jim.
Yeah, you gave it to Jim.
And then Jim got it up there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember now. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
But that's good. So,
All right.
So anyway, I guess we can start. I'm Dennis Everson, so you know my name, and you are.
And I'm Randall Phillips.
And Randall, one of the things that we wanted to talk about was some of the health issues that you've been going through, and some of the struggles you have with that, victories, issues, and just kind of share with people what it's like, because I know you have to do dialysis, and if someone
Yes.
isn't familiar with that, if they don't have a family member that does it, or if they don't, they hear the word, but they don't really know what that's like. So maybe you could share a little bit about that.
A lot of people are really foggy on what dialysis is. I've heard people say things like, well, aren't you sorry you drank all the time?
Oh, yeah.
Dialysis doesn't have anything to do with alcohol. It's when your kidneys fail, and they can fail for several reasons.
Mm-hmm.
With me, it was a reaction to some new diabetic medicine
Okay.
that did them in. But there are people who have genetically, it's a genetic thing with their parents,
Mm-hmm.
and they've inherited a genetic problem with their kidneys, and some other things can go on too.
Absolutely.
But basically, what happens is they have to take your blood and run it through a filter that takes out the impurities and the water from whatever Pepsi or whatever you drank that day,
Yeah.
and then returns your blood to you. And it's kind of an involved process. You have to have a access installed, usually in your arm. And
This is something that's permanent, or is this something when you go in?
Well,
it depends on.
it's sort of permanent.
Okay.
I'm on my second access
Okay.
in almost 11 years. So they're not something that just comes and goes.
Sure.
But they do wear out, and you have to have them replaced. But they, with this access, they put 2 big needles in your arm. One to take the blood out and one to put it back in. And you just sit there and let the machine run for about, in my case, it's 4.5 hours.
Wow.
It varies depending on, how big a person you are.
Sure.
And that sort of thing. But for me, it's 4.5 hours. And this happens 3 times a week.
Wow.
So
So that pretty much takes care of that day, I guess, for the most part.
well, considering that you're usually not feeling your best when you come off of the machine, it lowers your blood pressure, and you come off. Most people come off lightheaded, dizzy, kind of nauseous, and just tired.
Well, that
it
makes
wears you
sense.
out.
Yeah.
So it's pretty well eats your day. Your day's pretty well done. On dialysis days, you don't really figure on doing anything else.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's 3 days a week that you're doing it.
3 days a week, yes.
I guess now, for most people, does it vary depending on, or is it generally around that?
Everybody, just about everybody does 3 days a week.
Yeah.
There are varieties of dialysis that you do. If you're doing home dialysis, for
Mm-hmm.
example, which is the same thing, but it runs a little slower,
Okay.
and you basically hook it up when you go to bed, and you do that 6 days a week,
Oh wow.
and it runs while you're sleeping.
So basically it's replacing what your kidney's not able to do in filtering things out.
It's
and
attempting to replace
it's
it.
trying to.
your natural kidneys do a much better job of cleaning your blood. And of course, they're working all the time instead
Right.
of every other day.
Yeah.
So that's a lot better for your blood pressure and that sort of things.
And then does that affect your diet quite a bit too? Do you have to watch eating,
There
drinking,
are-
things like that?
There are specific things that you have to avoid or be very limited with. Dialysis does not do a good job of taking phosphorus or potassium out of your system.
Okay.
Most meats are high in phosphorus.
Yeah.
Most fruits are high in potassium.
Oh yeah.
So you have to, for example, bananas are
Oh yeah.
forbidden.
Yeah. Because people, when they want potassium, they go to a
They go
banana
for-
first thing. Is
go
what
for
they think of.
banana.
Yeah.
There are other things that are high in potassium.
Sure.
But that's one that everyone thinks of. So you have to avoid those. And there are some things that are safer than others. Apples are pretty safe. Celery is pretty safe. Things like that. But
Not the most fun food to be eating.
no,
Celery.
and, it's kind of an odd diet because on one hand you have to be very careful about your protein intake, but on the other hand, since you're doing dialysis and you lose blood every time, they want you to have high protein.
Oh sure.
So one thing kind of militates against the other.
So now with the ones that it doesn't filter as good, like the potassium, for instance, is there something then you have to do to supplement the dialysis for that, or is it?
Well, with the phosphorus, it does a really poor job with that, and so what you have to do is they give you these pills to take,
Okay.
and you have to take a bunch of them, and you have to take them every time you eat. They're called binders, and what they do is they latch onto the phosphorus in your system and don't let your body absorb it.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I think people might be familiar with that. They have ones they'll talk about with fat cells or different things that people will try that are supposed to bind with something and take it out. But some of them I don't know are really that
these
legit.
actually
but-
do bind with potassium.
Right.
And just take it on through your system, so that your body doesn't absorb it.
And then I imagine they're having to test your blood pretty much like all the time when you're doing it, or
Well, they test unless you're having a problem, they test you once a month.
once a month. And,
But if you're having some kind of issue, they'll test you
Sure.
more often than that. But yeah, fortunately, they don't have to stick you with yet another needle for that. They can just take the blood out
Right.
of the linus that's going through the system.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, and like you were saying with kidney failure or issues with the kidney, there's lots of things that can cause that. I know my dad, before he passed away, he was having some other issues, and it started to make his kidney sit down. And actually, my mom just yesterday, day before, had gotten dehydrated, and then it made her
It's
kidneys
making
getting
free
very
kidneys.
sluggish, and they weren't working right, and it was really throwing her off. And I didn't think, like you were saying, a lot of people don't realize there's a lot of things, and for you, medication that you were taking to try to
Right.
help you be healthy with the diabetes ended up leading to all those complications. So how long have you been dealing with this?
Dealing with the complications in general, 14 years, I guess.
Wow.
But with the dialysis per se, 10 and a half years.
Wow.
Yeah, I worked around it for a while. For a few years, I could, manage it with diet and just being really careful and
Yeah.
stuff. But about 11 years ago, I came down with the flu, a really bad case of the flu,
Okay.
and that just finished off, what
Right.
was the process anyway.
Yeah, whenever our systems are weak and we're having
Right.
issues, then something else comes in, and that can
Yes.
really throw things off. And now, I guess the one of the things that, or the only way, I guess, that someone can deal with that, there's really, I don't think they have any way for kidneys to get healthy that are like not working that I know of.
It does happen, but it's a really rare thing.
Yeah.
And it's usually somebody who's had their kidneys shut down from some kind of accident or from dehydration.
Something like that.
Yeah, I've known of 2 cases in the 10 years I've been doing it, people whose kidney function returned out of probably 200 people I've known.
And then the other option is, or I guess the main option is
A transplant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so far that's the only other. You either do dialysis or you do a transplant. That's it.
And I know I've watched enough doctor shows or whatever, or something, but I know that it's hard for them to find matches with transplants. What is involved with that? What makes it hard to do?
The primary thing is blood types, and if you're, say, you're A negative and you were to somehow get a transplant of a B positive kidney, your body would reject that. It would be like it would consider it like a disease, or like
Sure.
a disease germ or something like that.
Foreign cells in your body.
Some foreign something in your body, and it would reject it. So you have to match blood types, and there's some other things that's too scientific for me to understand.
Right. Yeah.
That have to match, but basically it's your blood type
Yeah.
that they look for.
And that can be, tricky in that. But I know you found a place that does some things with transplants that increase the options for people. Tell us about that.
This is a really neat idea. The transplant facility I'm working with up in Kansas City has a program whereby you can swap kidneys. If you have a living donor, of course, have to be a living donor in these situations. If you have a living donor whose blood type doesn't match yours, somebody, a cousin or something that wants to donate a kidney to you, and their blood type doesn't match yours, they can swap that with somebody else who's in a similar situation, whose donor's kidney does match yours.
Yeah.
So that gives you two people who get kidneys that wouldn't have had them otherwise. It's just a great idea.
Yeah, it's I heard about that. It's awesome. It's like, and then I think, why haven't there been more of this? Why don't
I don't know if other facilities do that or not. I just haven't had any experience with other facilities.
Yeah, I know this one was the first I heard of. I imagine there are some around,
surely somebody else is not.
Yeah, but it's such a great thing, because I know a lot of times with kidney donations, it's a relative, a lot of times, or someone very close to the family that will do that. But if the blood types don't match or whatever else they're looking at, then this is such a great option where someone else may have a family member or someone that's wanting to donate can't, because it doesn't match. Now that increases not only the opportunity to get it, but also increases the ability for someone to donate.
Exactly.
That's wanting to help out. I think that's just awesome. When it comes to donation, that might be something people wonder about. Well, they're going to need their kidney too, so how does that work?
Well, you can get by just fine on one kidney as long as it's a healthy kidney.
Yeah.
And if it's not a healthy kidney, they won't accept you for it as a donor, of course.
Yeah.
I guess the good Lord gave us two kidneys on purpose in case one fails. But as long as you have the one kidney, and as I understand it, after you've donated, you have to be a little more careful than normal.
I would imagine, yeah.
But it's not a significant hardship, to get by on just one kidney.
Yeah, I've heard of many people doing it. So yeah,
I suppose that's why they don't have living heart donors or something.
Right. Yeah, you only got one of those. Yeah, that's neat the way God has set up some things like that.
Yes.
And I guess one of the things that people might wonder too is, I can see where in a situation like yours, it was a medication that caused the kidneys to get damaged. So when it gets replaced, you're not having that same factor that's going to damage the new ones. And I'm sure that's something they consider too when they're looking at donors and donations and things like that.
That's true. You have most recipients have to take what they call immunosuppressants. They're drugs that are designed to make your body's immune system not entirely go away, but tamp it down so that it doesn't reject the kidney, because even with a good match, most people have some rejection issues because it's not yours, and your body figures that out.
Yeah.
So most people who have received an organ of any sort have to take immunosuppressants.
Is that something that you have to do before surgery also?
No.
Do you know? Okay.
No,
It's more after. And
They have to kind of play with it. There's like, I guess, maybe a dozen different
sure. Yeah.
drugs that they use for this, and they have to play around and figure out the ones that work with you. Some people have to take a lot of them,
Yeah.
and some people only have to take one or two in small doses. You know, it just depends on how well your body accepts the organ.
So then, like with a transplant, what is the recovery like? Because I imagine it's going to take some time for the new organ to not be rejected. You have those anti-immune drugs, so you have to be aware of, flus and all those kinds of things that you're more susceptible to.
As I understand it, they require you to stay at home, entirely at home, for a month after you get out of the hospital and stuff, so that you're not around anyone.
And they don't want people coming and visiting and stuff
No,
because
no,
they
you
want you
can't.
away from all germs.
That's the whole idea, is that you're supposed to stay away from any kind of bacteria, anything that can make you sick, because you don't have an immunity system.
Sure.
They basically, when they first put the organ in, they basically kill your immune system, and it
Yeah.
has to come back.
Yeah.
So you're at home for a good while. This is not a minor surgery. It's a big surgery, about as big as they get. So you're going to have just from the surgery itself, you're going to have a recovery curve. But most people, once they get over the recovery time and get their immunity back up, live a pretty normal life.
Yeah.
There are situations you can get into, that they say you really shouldn't, you shouldn't be mud wrestling, maybe.
Right.
Something like that. But you can do most things that anybody else can do,
Yeah.
You can go rafting or,
Sure.
things like that.
Right.
And just pretty much lead a normal life.
Yeah, the other part with the recovery I was wondering about, and people might wonder, is like the dialysis part, I guess, is stopped then? Your new kidney's trying to work? Is that something they have to play around with every...
I'm not sure exactly how that works. I think as soon as you get the kidney in, it starts functioning, and you might still have to have a little dialysis.
Sure.
I guess it would depend on
I
the
guess it would
individual.
everyone, they have to really monitor
Yeah,
close and see how the
but
blood's
for-
doing.
If you do, I'm sure it's only for maybe a week or two, So I know they do everything they can to get that kidney up and running and functioning as normally as possible, as quickly as possible.
Sure.
I understand that they make you drink, Lake Mead full of water every day.
Oh, I'll bet, yeah. Kind of flushes out and stuff and keeps
to
things,
get it, to wake, as they call it, wake it up and get it going.
Sure, that makes sense. I'm going to check the time real quick.
Okay.
Because I can edit that out and make sure it's still doing everything it's supposed to do. I heard a noise before, so I want to make sure it wasn't it. Didn't sound like anything. It makes a noise.
I think your phone.
Yeah, we're doing good. Yeah, well, we were at 18 minutes. If I waited a couple more minutes, I would have hit 20 exactly. But I can cut that out easy.
Okay.
And one of the things I want to do, is make sure I put a link to that facility you were talking
Right.
about that does the donations and make people aware of that. I know one of the things that Jim Weining's doing with Axe Media Group is also wanting to try to help with raising some donations to help
Right.
you with all the costs. And that's something we should definitely talk about, for people that aren't aware of it. I'm sure anyone that's had some health issues know that anything health related can be expensive. But for someone going through dialysis, 3 times a week, you got the transportation, you got all that kind of thing, and then looking at transplants, not being able to go out for a month, all these types of things. Can you give us kind of a general idea of what it's like cost-wise, just so people get a feel for that?
If you were to walk into a transplant facility and write a check for a transplant, you'd be down about $450,000.
Yeah.
In my case, Medicare pays 80% of it, which is ballpark of 400,000.
Right.
And Medicaid theoretically will pay the balance. Medicaid does something called a spin down.
Yeah, tell us how that works, because that's...
Well, that's a good question. It's complicated, bureaucratic, and a little crazy. But the theory is that, and what spin down started out as, was the idea that if you're going to have major medical stuff going on, you should contribute something to it. And originally, as I understand it, it was not a lot. You know, people would be expected to pay $1 for a doctor's visit or something
Sure.
of that nature. What it's evolved to, though, is they require you, if you're going to use Medicaid within a month, you have to pay a spin down, which, to my way of thinking, is pretty draconian. In my case, get about $1,200 a month income from disability, and my spin down is $345.
Wow. So that's like.
So it's a
yeah,
huge chunk of your income, especially when you're on a small income to start
like
with.
around 25% or something.
Yeah,
20,
yeah,
quite a
something
bit.
like that.
Wow. Yeah, and you know, I can understand, I guess, where someone somewhere along the line thought, well, you know, everybody should have a little skin in the game, but at some point they got to go, hey, you know, let's look at the balance on
Yes.
this.
And frankly, that's more than I can pay, and
Sure.
so that's what's keeping me right now from getting a transplant.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's the barrier.
So the big barrier you have is taking care of the spin down.
Is the financial stuff
from
not
the extra
medical
costs
stuff.
they have.
Yeah. the medical stuff so far has gone
Yeah.
really well. You know, in my case,
Right.
sometimes people can't get a transplant because of medical reasons. You know,
Right.
there's something else going on with them.
Yeah, I know there's some. I know, like my father, he was 87 when he was starting to have some problems with his kidney, and it was at the point with him, it would have been where, okay, he's going to be on dialysis the rest of his life, and
Yes.
that's kind of the way it's going to end. And I know for some people, it does kind of go that way,
That's true.
unfortunately.
That is true.
Where they get, it's, I guess, maybe even more issues than just a kidney, but they're, you know, and,
Right.
well, what a way to go out with all that, you know, 3 times a week, going through dialysis.
Dialysis
and, you know,
is very difficult on older
yeah.
people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I can't even imagine if it's wearing you out and everything, and then if you got someone that's older and maybe not have.
And
At least I
already-
know as I get older, I don't have as much energy as I used to.
Already worn out to start with. You know? So yeah, it's rough on older people.
So they won't even give you an opportunity to do anything without that spin down taken care of.
That's correct.
And I know that's one of the things that Jim was wanting to raise some funds for. Where are you at with that? You can give us an idea so people would know that are wanting to donate and things like that.
I'm not.
Like where are you at with the spin down? What would it take for you to be able to take care of the things you need to take care of to be able to go and do the transplant? Like what kind of funds are you looking at?
At the moment, it takes $345 a month.
Yeah.
You know, but the X Media has been helping a little bit. They've just kind of gotten into the game on this.
Right. Yeah, it's all kind of new, I know. And
I've had relatives and friends and stuff who've donated, just handed me money to go for that, which has helped out a lot. At this point, right today, we are okay on it, but it's a new game every.
Oh, sure.
First of every month.
Every month is new, right?
Right.
Yeah, and we'll make sure we have a link available for people for.
Okay.
I don't know how Jim had it set up yet, if he did a GoFundMe or how he's doing that, but we'll make sure we have that available, and as we keep moving forward and let people know too how things are going and progressing
Great.
and things like that.
Much appreciated. And just so people know, this is not just an issue that I'm having.
Right.
I know of at least 2 people right now who are in exactly the same boat, and the reason they can't get a transplant is because they can't afford the spin down.
Right.
We've had some conversations with people in the governor's office, and there's a possibility that in the future, at some point, there will be some kind of legislation that will remedy this. But anything of that nature takes a long time.
Yeah, it's such a process.
And it's not a guarantee at that.
Yeah, and sometimes what they try to do to fix something makes it worse than what it was, and I've seen that happen. I work with individuals with disabilities, and there were a lot of them that did work like for piecework, things like that.
Yes.
What they could do, and then there was legislation that came through. This is a few years back in Missouri where they made it to where all the individuals had to at least get minimum wage. Well, all the ones that did piecework couldn't do it anymore. So I saw overnight just in individuals I worked with, there was like 20 or 30 that just lost their job overnight,
Yeah.
and they couldn't do. And they thought they were helping them by saying, "Hey, we're
Right.
going to make this." And so I know that's always a process, and that's something too that. At Axe Media Group, we want to make people aware of is how some of the laws work and some of the things. And of course, it gets very complicated. But there are times when, sometimes a call to a governor, sometimes they hear about things that are going through that they can let them know, hey, this isn't doing what you wanted it to do.
Right.
You're hurting people instead of helping people.
Exactly.
And, when you have individuals that are there willing to help, willing to make donations, make sacrifices in their lives to help someone, and then there's some kind of bureaucracy or something that's in the way, man, we need to find ways to get rid of those things and open the doors for people, because
Right.
Especially in our country and in the time we have, the technology exists, the abilities there, but there's usually silly little things that are in the way that make things impossible for people that it just shouldn't be that way.
Exhibit A here.
Yeah. I think we got a good thing to put together for it here, but is there anything else you want to share, personally, or just anything at all?
Well, I've been doing this 10 years, and when you go to the clinic, you're in a chair with needles in your arm and all of that, and you see a lot of stuff going on in the clinic. First of all, I would like to say that I am incredibly grateful to the people who work with me 3 times a week, and they have a very hard job. Not just physically hard. It's physically hard. They're
Right.
on their feet the whole time they're there, but it's also a very hard job emotionally.
Yeah.
Because people die on dialysis.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I've witnessed people dying, and right there in the chair, next to me, or a couple of chairs down, and they deal with this on a constant basis.
Right.
And I just want to say how much I appreciate their hard work. Most of them are very knowledgeable, really more knowledgeable than the doctors on some things.
Oh, sure.
And I just want to say how much I appreciate them and all that they do for all of us. I know here in Springfield there's something like 500 people on dialysis.
Wow.
In all the different clinics
Sure.
and stuff. Second, if you know someone on dialysis, don't just assume because they look normal. I mean, looking at
Right,
me,
right.
you couldn't tell any difference.
Absolutely.
That things are going normal for them. This is tough stuff sometimes.
Sure.
There are days when I get home and barely crawl into bed.
Yeah.
That's about all I can manage, and I'm on the higher function end of things.
Well, I imagine it's quite isolating for many individuals.
There's a lot of things that happen in my church and things that I can't participate in because that's on a dialysis day and I can't do that. And most people are that way.
Yeah.
So you maybe go out of your way a little bit to include a dialysis patient in whatever you're doing and that sort of thing.
Reschedule things around their schedule instead of
what they can do instead of
yeah.
what you want to do maybe. That would be greatly appreciated by a lot of dialysis patients.
Yeah, and I really think the individuals working in the clinics like that, like you're saying, definitely a good group to keep in prayer, because
Absolutely.
for many of us, I mean, we don't even experience death very often at all. Some of us may not have ever, we maybe have a relative that's on their last days, we're with them or something like that. But
Yes.
could you imagine going into work where that day you may have someone, like you said, dying in the chair?
You
that
never
you've
know.
seen. Yeah, and there's no way of knowing, and you're developing those friendships with them and
Yes.
joking with them and all that.
Yeah.
And then the next time they're there,
It's tough having somebody that you knew and loved as a friend die in front of you.
right? Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so we definitely need to pray for those individuals and for those that are going through the treatment, as well as those that are doing that, because that is emotionally draining. Anyone that's had a job with a lot of emotion can understand that.
Yes.
I imagine there are some that don't experience a lot of emotion, may not understand it, but emotional draining is actually can be more draining on you than physical because
To my point of view, this is probably about as bad as it gets.
yeah,
Maybe a nursing home situation would be worse.
right, yeah,
But, if you're in the hospital and if you're working in a hospital and someone dies on you, you might have known them 3 or 4 days.
right,
These guys, I've got people that I've worked with for 10 years.
Sure.
That have worked with me, I should say.
right.
For, the whole time I've
Oh
been
yeah,
there.
oh yeah,
And they're quite close friends,
sure. Yeah.
And,
You're spending a lot of time there, so
Yeah.
you're going to
I've
develop that.
I've watched some of them's kids, pretty much grow up,
Sure, sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It is one of the hardest ones, or one of the hard areas, because I know my sister works in a nursing home, and she definitely has individuals that go to be
Yes.
with the Lord and that, but it is, somewhat expected. I mean, they are on their last years and stuff. It's hard, but, they know that, but to be at a treatment place that you're helping someone, and yet when they're coming in for help, they may not make it that day.
Right.
That does make it a lot harder,
Right.
I think, where you're
Right.
not, you're definitely wanting this to be a different outcome, and there's
Yes.
no control over it.
Yeah.
You're doing what you can, and it's not enough sometimes. And so, yeah, that's definitely. Well, I think let's close in prayer, and
Okay.
let's pray for those individuals. And if you're willing, if you'd lead out with that, and then I'll kind of close after you, and
Okay.
we'll do it that way.
Father, I thank you for the people who take care of me, for the hours they spend, for the knowledge they have, and for the compassion they have for those of us on dialysis. And I ask that you be with those people and with their families, and just bear them up and strengthen them in the tough times. And I thank you for the technology we have in our society today that makes it possible for people like me to live 10 years longer than I would have, in an earlier time, and for the ability to do the transplants and all of it. And I ask that you be with everyone going down this road, and that you give us the opportunity to have the best health possible, both to serve you and to just live our lives with our families.
Heavenly Father, I just thank you for Randall coming and sharing his story with us, and I pray for him. I pray for his needs, that you'll continue to bring individuals around him that will support him and help him emotionally, financially, spiritually, just all the areas there, that we'll be able to see him move forward with a transplant, that obstacles be removed from the way, and that his other friends and those that he knows, that then we can reach out also and help them, and not just be a one-time thing, but we'll raise up an army of individuals that will support and help those that are dealing with this issue. And Father, I just thank you for those workers at the dialysis clinics. It's a very hard job, a very draining job, and I just pray that